What is your secret? So I am an elder law attorney, and I talk about aging issues, but I don't talk about aging issues from the perspective of money. I talk about aging issues from a very third world perspective. How many of you could guess, take a wild guess, that I was probably not born in Waco, Texas? Yeah. So I am your typical first generation foreigner who jumps on the flying carpet and says, I want to go to America. Why? Because I hear the streets of America are paved with gold. That's right. Now raise your hands if you buy that story. And you know what a darn shame that we don't buy into that story, because go ask any first generation foreigner who comes into the country. What does it take to succeed in America? You work hard, you play by the rules, you persevere. There's no guarantee of success, but the chances that you're going to succeed much better here than anywhere in the world. And that is my story, and I had come from India not to be a lawyer. I was a insurance salesman, and then I had been elevated to the position, the lofty position of an insurance sales manager when I met my wife from a small town called Spokane, Washington. And that introduction changed the whole perspective of what America looked like to me. And here's what that story is, so I can give you the background, and then you'll better understand as to where this presentation is going. So, my wife's father was a mail carrier for the US Postal System. Her wife, her mother, my father-in-law's wife, was a nurse working in the hospital system. They had raised 5 wonderful kids, and they had built their retirement dreams around this crazy simple notion that if by the time we retire, we have a house that's paid for, a few $100,000 in the bank, then surely between Social Security, Medicare, and our debt-free lifestyle, we should be able to skate to retirement. The day that Bill was going to retire from the US Postal System, they were going to jump in the RV, go do the American highways and the byways. So far, pretty much a typical retirement plan for the average American, right? The RV in this house never left the house. Why? Because Bill gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's the last year of his work life. Vivian, who is a nurse, looks inward and says, at least I'm a nurse, and I'll see to it that my husband doesn't end up in a nursing home. For 6 to 7 years, she bashes her head against the wall. And finally, when Bill's condition gets to a point that he is no longer recognizing Vivian, he starts wandering away from the house, looking for his wife, looking for his house. She then turns to the doctor, the person of fastest road usually in our society, and says, oh doc, I need help. I can't take care of 5 acres of land and take care of Bill in this condition. And the doctor says, oh Vivian, you're a nurse, you should know better than this. There is no answer to what Bill has. Bill belongs in a nursing home. So this is your prototypical 6 to 7 year journey for people who deal with dementia or some late life illnesses or incapacities, where Bill ends up in a nursing home. And the first time that I see him was when he was in the nursing home. And my introduction to this family really was Jamie, now my wife, she had wrecked her car on the way to Spokane and being insured by Allstate insurance companies. And I was working at that time for Allstate insurance companies. And the claims department had done one of these things. The good hands had come apart, and somebody dumped her file on my desk to make her a happy client. In one of those phone conversations, she asked me, where are you from? And I said, from India. She said, I thought so, I have relatives from India. That then opened the door to a personal conversation. We settled the claim. I asked her to marry me. She said, yes. I said, sure. And then we went to Spokane to see her side of the family. We left on a Friday, stayed with her mom, met her sisters, nieces, nephews on Saturday, and Sunday on the way back, she says, I want to stop and say hi to my dad. Now, mind you, I knew Bill had Alzheimer's by now, didn't know what Alzheimer's was, and I knew he was living in a nursing home. I promise you, I had no concept of what a place called a nursing home would be. And we spent 2 very awkward hours in this meeting. Bill had lost his speech by now, but he looked at his daughter, recognized her instantly, and he bust out in the biggest regrets. And after about 2 hours, we were trying to leave the place, and there is Bill, hanging on to Jamie, thinking that she was there to take him home. And she was just bawling. And we were standing near one of those doors where you can enter the key code to get out. And some worker notices this commotion, comes over, taps Bill on the shoulder long enough to distract him. So we could enter the key code and leave the place, and the door shuts. And for the first time in so many years in America, I walk away asking myself, how does the richest country in the entire world take care of the old people when they can no longer care for themselves. The reason why it's so easy for someone like me to ask this question is the so-called third world that I come from. I see all four of my grandparents take their last breath, sleeping in the same pillow they've always slept on, invariably surrounded by their loved ones. And that's the third world. This may as well be the 10th world when it comes to taking care of the sick. So Jamie and I get married, we asked Vivian to move in with us, and after hemming and hawing for a good long 6 or 7 months, he finally agrees to it. And then Vivian gets moved in with us, and Bill gets moved from a nursing home from Spokane to a nursing home in Seattle. And by the time he gets here, he's no longer walking, he's no longer in a locked unit. He's in open ward. Every time that I would see him, he would be either in a wheelchair or in bed, and after about 3 or 4 weeks, I'm scratching my head and saying, why is this man in the nursing home? Oh, because he's incontinent, he's unambulatory, he needs people to care for him. Really, if that's the litmus test why the average human being should no longer be able to live at home, then about a third of the real world should be living in the jungle somewhere. I mean, think about it. What happens to us as we age happens exactly the same all over the world. But how we deal with these aging issues is utterly extraordinary in the richest country in the world. Is there any way we could take him back home? Of course there is. How do you do that? Well, you just hire a team of people to take care of him at home. Also, this is a financial issue. And talking about finances, remember the house paid for a few $100,000 in the bank? By the time Vivian moved into our house, all that money had been drained down. The only asset that she was left with was a house she had downsized to in an attempt to take care of her husband, worth $60,000. And somebody in the nursing home in Spokane had looked at Vivian and said, oh, Mrs. Wallace, you need to look into a program called Medicaid. It's called Medicare here in California. Oh, no, that's a welfare program. We're not welfare people. Oh, no, that's the program that will cover your husband's care cost. And our government was paying $5,500 each month back then to take care of them in this nursing home. How much will it cost for us to go ahead and take them at home? Well, it depends how much care you need. Arguably, if you need 24/7 care, probably more expensive at home, because at home you're getting one-on-one 24/7 care. And in a nursing home, you spread the cost with a lot of people. But I'm looking at it and saying, this man is nowhere close to getting 24/7 care. He may have access to care. Here's what his day looks like. Somebody between 7 and 8 in the morning is going to come, wake him up, get him ready for the day, put him in a wheelchair, put the wheelchair outside the door. He'll get shaved twice a week. He'll get a shower or a bath once a week. Another crew will take him from that place and take him down to the dining room. 6 people sitting around a horseshoe table with one person feeding 6 people from the outside. And after about an hour, doesn't matter how much nourishment these people have had, after about an hour, they clean them up, put them in another area, usually in front of a TV or a bunch of people with their heads hanging out. And then another crew will take them out back to the room. And this will happen again in the daytime, this will happen again at night. When is the last time that you've gone to any nursing home where you've seen the people who are living there actually enjoy the gardens? These people are spending thousands of dollars maintaining. What are we doing this for? He didn't need 24/7 care for about half the amount of money. We could hire some help in the morning, some help in the evening. We could take care of him at home. Great, let's be the first ones to go to Medicaid and stand in line and say, we would like to find a way to save you money. We actually have a way to save you money. What do you think the answer is? The program Mr. Wallace is on allows him to access Medicaid in the nursing home setting. You can take him home, you have to pay privately. That then got me looking for a lawyer. Now remember, at that time I was not a lawyer. And if you are lucky, somebody will say, you need to go see an elder law attorney. Well, I didn't know the difference between estate planning, elder law, family law. It was just a lawyer who hopefully went to a law school, not Kmart, to get the degree. And there was no answer to what we needed. Everyone knew what Medicaid was, but how do you get Medicare, Medi-Cal to cover care at home? That was not the province of lawyers. That put me back to law school. Bill takes his last breath. In the second year, I took my last final exam in the nursing home. Despite the fact, by second year, I figured out there's no truth to the fact. Medicaid does cover care at home, but which Starbucks are you going to go meet Mr. Medicaid? Who is Mr. Medicaid for the average consumer? There is a social worker working in the hospital or the nursing home who gives you the information. I ask myself this: How much education does a underpaid, overworked social worker have about these highly complex programs even lawyers are having a hard time keeping up with? So Bill takes his last breath in the nursing home. Vivian lived with us another 6 years after the fact. Died of kidney cancer that had metastasized to the lungs. And if you know of anyone with bone cancer, incontinent, unambulatory, unable to care for her needs. A poster child of a human being who should have spent somewhere between 6 months to something longer in some care facility somewhere. Took her last breath sleeping in the same pillow she'd always slept on, surrounded by her. And not for one single day did we go to Medicaid to help us in any way, shape, or form. This is 17 years ago I went into this story. And for 17 years I've been bringing the same story. It's not the lack of rules or the laws or the know-how that get us to these pathetic results that we get to retirement. It is the utter sheer lack of understanding what retirement planning really is all about. And that really is the subject matter, because when you take a look at all the research that is done around the aging issues, who asks any retiree, what are your biggest fears in retirement? Here are the top 3 fears people will say they have in retirement, even though if I was to poll and ask you, you will not all readily get there. So let's take a look. The number 1 fear people say they have in retirement. It's not running out of money. It's I hope I never have to go to a nursing home. If I can, I don't even mind falling ill. I don't mind having dementia. I don't mind having any of these illnesses. But if I can take care of whatever it is that I have to take care of in the comfort, in the familiarity of my own home, where I have a measure of control over my life, I'd much rather have that than somebody take me out from my home and put me in an alien environment. That's the number 1 fear we have. The second biggest fear people say they have is running out of money. And the third biggest fear people say they have is becoming a burden on other people. So this is another way of saying that if somehow we can conduct our life, we can organize a life where we don't become a burden to other people, we don't run out of money, we don't end up in a nursing home against our wishes, that is not a bad life to have lived. Right? We can all agree with that. So here's the second part of the question I ask people is, so what does the retirement planning journey for the average person look like? And by the way, this is something that I added on the airplane coming down up here, thinking about this conference. When was the last time in the planning phase that we worry about this issue? We all have supreme confidence, our family will get along fine. I love my wife, I love my kids, and you've heard from a lot of people up here. But this is not what we talk about. So, the second part of the equation, what does retirement, what does that journey look like? Here's what the average person's retirement planning journey looks like. Somewhere between age 60 and 62, majority of us have had. Had what? Oh, I just am done with working. I wish I could just walk into my boss's office and say, I'm miserable, I don't want to come back to work anymore. Right? Kerri, you've got a few years to go here. So, somewhere between 60 and 62 we've had. But the average grunt will hang in there working at least till age 65 because there's something magical that will happen at age 65 that doesn't happen at any other age. What's the magic of 65? Not pension, not Social Security, it's Medicare. Why is that important? Because we know that going into retirement without having access to meaningful health care is not a good way to retire, so miserable will not be hanging there working at least till 65, enroll in Medicare, buy a supplemental insurance plan, and then from a planning checklist that we keep, if there is even a checklist, we'll check the box off. This will what will give us the courage to walk into the boss's office and say, I'm done, I'm not coming back to work anymore. That's healthcare planning for the average person in America in retirement. The second thing that we will take a look at is the housing issue. What is the average person's housing goal in America? Oh, I want to be able to live my life in my own home. Or at least as long as possible. And when the time comes that I can no longer manage to live my life at home, we'll figure something out. So we want to be able to live our life in our own home. Is that really a plan? That's more of a hope, isn't it? There's no real planning around the whole issue. When I look at Kerri's stuff, and when I look at Mickey Rooney, and then Ms. Rooney has been talking about your dad for years without you ever knowing it. Why do these things go wrong? And I would love to go ahead and converse and say, what is the real planning around the housing issue? And the reality is a hope. There's no real planning. That's housing. Then we take a look at finances. And truth be told, the average person in America will mistake financial planning with retirement planning. Why? Because the notion around financial planning is this. If we can just amass enough money to go into retirement with a large enough retirement nest egg, then somewhere between your retirement nest egg, your debt-free lifestyle, Medicare, Social Security, life should be okay. We should be able to skate through retirement. Right? We just have enough money. So here's a question for everyone in this room, and I want to hear an audible answer. How much money do you think will be enough for you to be able to go into retirement with and say, I'm supremely confident life can throw anything my way, I'll never have to worry about anything?
65 million.
Somebody said $5 million. And somebody said $65 million. How about $80 million? Huh? And then you meet a guy called, sorry Kerri, Kasem. What is the new version of Kasem right now today? Tim Conway. Here's $80 million sitting in this family. Why is the stupid question not, how many people do we need to hire to take care of this person at home? Why are we talking about this person being displaced from his house, from California through Oregon, to take his last breath in an alien environment in Washington State? Why is that happening? This sheer arrogance that we have, that we just have enough money, somehow money will take care of everything. It's just that. The real question in financial planning that is never asked, that is far more important than how much money you have, is what assurance do you have that the day you are no longer in control of your faculties, that people who are going to manage the money will know how to use the money to give you a life which is in keeping with your expectations. But when is the last time you see a financial planning concern pull out ads that say it's not the magnitude of money, it is the use of money that will be far more important in the long run? People will buy long-term care insurance policies. Somehow, if you buy a long-term care insurance policy, you won't go to a nursing home. Really? That's financial planning. Then you do legal planning. Not to be outdone with the absurdity of financial planning. This is what law schools teach us. Help clients come up with an assortment of documents. What kind of documents? Start with a will or trust. Why? Because in your own words, you want to be able to set out who are you leaving your earthly possessions to the day that you die. Second document, power of. Who will manage your finances, your health care until such time that you die, because your power of attorney will die with you. The third document you will end up creating, a living will or advance directive. Dr. Kasem talked about that. Do I want a feeding tube if I was in a coma? In other words, how do you want to? You see this picture emerging. The average person's impressive looking binder sitting at home with a will, trust, power of attorney, living wills, assortment of other documents. Congratulations, now you're ready to. And there you are, you and your family are going to be sitting at home thinking that if I have bought insurance, I have the hope of living my life in my own home. I'll treat my estate as if it is $80 million, because no one will ever walk into my life and say, Rajiv, we feel bad for you, here's some more money. Take some. That will never happen. And then you've got your legal planning in place. This is what I call is the traditional way the American person gets ready for retirement. This was my father-in-law's retirement plan. This plan will prove to be a recipe for disaster for majority of the people. Why will that happen? Here's why. So you're sitting at home one day, you've done all this planning, and you're sitting at home one day watching your favorite TV show, and right in the middle of the TV show, out of left field, out of nowhere at all, a massive headache just hits you. And somewhere in the period, some of you know, oh, this is not a headache, this is something more. You're smart enough to pick up the phone, dial 911, EMTs come crashing to the door and say, grab your call, you're having a heart attack. Stroke. Usually. Something. That's a health issue. Enrolled in Medicare bought a supplement plan. Question, do Medicare and supplement plans deliver everything you were hoping they were going to deliver for you at this stage of your life?
No, of course not.
Isn't that a shame? We are so sure that our healthcare system is badly broken, and yes, it is. But you know, the way it is broken is not in our ability to save your life after you have an illness. Indeed, think about it. Where did people who had Ebola, where did they want to go to get treated? We lost 2 people to Ebola in America. Europe lost 27 patients to Ebola. This is where we know how to put Humpty Dumpty back together again after Humpty Dumpty failed. It's thanks to your Medicare system, at least at this point, that the EMTs take you to the hospital. The doctor probably saves your life, and after 2 days in the hospital, the doctor walks in the room and says, oh, Mr. Nagaich, The moment we wheel you in, we do some gut. I know exactly why you had the stroke, what you need to do so you don't have the next one. Would you be interested in this information? Right? Doesn't matter how much pain you're in, you gotta sit up. This, I want to hear. Here's what the doctor says. Dr. Reyes walks in the room and said, Rajiv, quit eating Cheetos at 2 o'clock in the morning. Get up, exercise, lose weight, socialize. There's no magic. There's no real unknown reason why all this catastrophe is happening. It's not a lifestyle issue anymore. But the reality is I can't make you do this stuff any more than the other guy does. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you a bag full of pills, ask you to leave my hospital because I have 27 other patients in the ER right now who need this bag. But you can't go back home. Where do you end up? Not a nursing home, no. Rehab center, that's right. What's another word for rehab center? A nursing home. That's right. But no one looks at this as a nursing home. Why? Because 2 reasons. One, we never wanted to go there. And secondly, we can at least say, oh, no, we're going here to get speech, physical, occupational therapy, some therapy designed to get us better, so we get better and go home. So you end up in a rehab center, 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. One look at the foyer, what goes through your head? I'll do everything you ask me to do. I want to be out of this place as quick as possible. And you're hoping that if you do everything they ask you to do, eat right, exercise, that's what they force on you. That you should be at home. I should be out here by Friday. Friday comes and goes, you're still stuck there. Well, that's a bummer. Okay, well, next Friday comes and goes, you're still stuck there. And on Saturday, your spouse, your child, somebody you gave the power of attorney to, you have total confidence these people will be able to figure this out. That person walks in the room and says, oh, hi, honey, hi, dad, hi, mom, how are you? What do you think your answer is at this time? Yeah. Right, don't you dare, honey, did you bring a pickup truck? This will now become a housing issue. Mind you, this is not a housing issue for the person who is ill. This is a housing nightmare for every single person you promised you didn't want to become a burden. But financially speaking, so far, who's covering this bill? Medicare, up to 100 days. Oh, 3 plus months. How many people hang around rehab centers 3 plus months? Except the second day you got there, the 10th, 15th, 30th, 50th, 60th, someday well before 100 days are over, usually on a Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Dr. Reyes and his nurse walk in the room and say, Mr. Nagaich, you seem to have plateaued. You're not making progress anymore. And Medicare says they're going to stop paying your bills starting Monday. What happened to my 100 days? It's up to 100 days. You have to do your part as if I have a choice. So what are my choices now? Go back home. And you schmuck, you really think it's your gourmet dinners you're dishing out every night that's keeping me here. There's some reason I can't go back home. What's my other choice? Well, you can stay here, pay privately. If you were to get rehab in a rehab center, what do you think you would be paying privately in Southern Cal? How about between $15,000 to $18,000 a month? $500 to $600 a day. The moment you hear that number, what goes through your head is, hey, quit holding my hands. I'll walk down the hallway on my own. I don't need your rehab. And now you will be shuffled to the nursing home part, probably a different part of the building, the nursing home, where your costs will come down to between $9,000 to $12,000. And either way you look at it, this will now become a financial issue for many of us. And if you're lucky, somebody will say, go seek an elder law attorney. No, I've got all my legal documents. I don't need to see a lawyer. Oh, yes, you do. These attorneys will help you cope with these crazy expenses. But if you go to the right elder law attorney, the real question burning at this time is not simply how do you protect your money. The real question burning at this point in time is, I've got a mom or a dad, husband or wife stuck in the nursing home. How do I take care of this person's life so they can live as good a quality of life as possible under the conditions? Hopefully without them running out of money, and hopefully without me losing my sanity in the process. How many of you have taken care of a loved one in this room? And how many of you almost lost the sanity? Right? Isn't that funny? And now this has become a legal issue. And the reality is the person who actually falls ill, goes to the hospital, is served by one heck of a lot of smart people in their life. They fell ill. They probably had a doctor before they fell ill. They went to the hospital. Another doctor helps them. And the doctor is the one who said, hey, you need to go to a rehab center. Can we sue the doctor because you didn't pay any attention to what financial havoc this discharge may have on my financial life? Did the doctor do anything wrong? No. I went to med school to save your life. I saved your life. Say thank you. Please be on your way. Financial plan said, go buy a long-term care policy. I looked at that stupid product and said, if I'm going to pay $150,000, $200,000 in out of my lifetime for this product I may never end up using, won't I be better off putting the money in the bank account? Well, the financial plan says, don't blame me. I did my job. I bought a house, 3 stories tall, wonderful view. Except the day I fall down, break my hip, I can't go back into this house. Well, don't tell me you wanted your dream home. I did my job. Lawyers died planning. I did my job. How could it be? How could this be? That's not because we don't do the planning, despite the fact that we do the planning. Despite the fact that we see lawyers and doctors and financial planners and mortgage brokers and real estate agents, despite being surrounded by smart people, 70% of America is going to fail in retirement. The reason is 70%. Well, I'll expand on that, because not to one of these people do we ever go and say, at the planning stages, these are the goals that I have. Avoid institution care, protect money, not be a burden, and I certainly don't want to go ahead and see feuds and abuse in my life. We never look at life that way. And guess what? Every professional is busy doing exactly what they need to be doing for you. And yet in the end, when a health issue happens, the health issue will then turn into a housing issue, will then turn into a financial, will then turn into a, and all along the way it's a family affair. Just saying that I don't want to be a burden means nothing. It's worse than a politician's slogan. The day that you fall ill, here's the reality. Your family is stuck in your life. The only question is how well prepared are they and how much time do they have. That's the rest of the seminar that I've been doing. 17 years I've been saying this. And I've given up trying to go ahead and convince professionals to do the right thing. Bill had a lawyer, a financial planner, a doctor. He had all of the trappings that you can think about, doing all the things responsibly. I would suspect that some of these famous names that you hear of, your dad, we did all the planning that was given to us by traditional planning. But it's not the financial planners or the lawyers who are going to take the blame. Therefore, it becomes incumbent that you and I understand the journey a little bit differently. We engage in fragmented planning. When was the last time your doctor, your financial planner, your lawyer sit around the table and say, hey, I am giving this advice to the client, our mutual client up here. Is there anything I'm saying that may come back to hurt your efforts later on? When was the last time that happened? And yet, in the end, this is all a continuum that we have to work with. So where do you start? Here's where you start. Understand that the most important asset that the average person has in retirement has got nothing to do with money. What do you think the most important asset a person is going to walk into retirement with? Is health. That's right. So if you have a pen and paper, write this down. I will give you a prescription of how you can help your clients, your loved ones never end up in a nursing home. Are you ready? Don't fall ill. That's right. Isn't that funny? I mean, we laugh about the whole thing, but I'm looking at this from the third world eyes and saying, there's something drastically wrong with the healthcare system. Here's what's wrong with the healthcare system. We know every cotton-picking way trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again after we have the illness. We spend precious little time trying to go ahead and keep the population from having a heart attack, stroke, or cancer, or diabetes. Why? Because which doctor, which hospital, which gizmo manufacturing company, which pharmaceutical company is going to make money when you don't fall ill? It is not up to the businesses or the companies or the establishment to help you get there. It is up to you and I to understand. Good health is about eat right, exercise, socialize, and have the right people on the medical team. Now, who can help you with this stuff? Eat right, exercise, socialize. Who's going to make you do that? Either you do it or you don't. Jumping to conclusions 10 times a day is still not exercise. You have to do something, but can you do something about having the right medical team? So there's a guy called Chad Bowl, research physician at the University of Minnesota in the late 1980s. He looked at 568 people, all over the age of 70. In the opinion of this research physician, all of these people were about to have a medical episode of some sort. They were going to have a health decline, cognitive, functional something. He divides the group into two groups. One group, he says, you go see this group of specialists. Another group, he says, go continue to see your regular doctors. By the way, let's talk about regular doctors. Typically, what is the specialty of your primary care physician? No, it is. There's internal medicine, somebody said, or family medicine, right? Internal medicine, family medicine. He writes a letter to his internists and family docs and says, we think your patient is at high risk of falling ill. You would do well by paying attention to that. So he puts these doctors in notice. 18 months after the fact, he looks at the results on both the sides and he says that people who were seeing internal medicine doctors compared to specialists, both of the groups had lost 10% of the patient load. So the specialists were not keeping people living longer, but here's what he did find out. People who were seeing specialists compared to the people who were seeing internal medicine doctors. People who were seeing specialists, 50% less depression, 40% less use of home care and home health, 25% less disabilities. Let me read the middle one again. 40% less use of home care and home health. What does life look like to a person when you don't need home care and home health? You're nowhere close to being in a nursing home. That's what life looks like. How many of you would like to lower your risk of going to a nursing home by 40% without necessarily spending a penny more? And how many of you demand from your insurance company that I refuse to sign up with you unless until you can show me you've got a large enough group of these specialists who can help lower the risk of going to a nursing home by 40%? 1, 2. Well, I'd be surprised you look too young to be in that group, but maybe you do. Who is the specialist? A geriatrician. What? A geriatric care physician. You have a kid, 10-year-old. You go to a clinic, 2 doors, pediatric care, internal medicine. Which door do you open? Pediatric. Why? They're specialists, they're babies. That means the physiology of children under the age of 18 is different than the rest of the population. We've known since the 1970s the physiology of people over the age of 70 is very different than the rest of the population. Medication that is good for you in your 30s, 40s, or 50s may become poison when you're 60, 70, and 80. Why would we not want to use the same logic as we use for children to help our parents get the right medical care? That's just one small little example that I give people. And the first thing I do in my law practice, think about it. First thing I do in my law practice, who's your insurance company? We take a look at the insurance company. Do you like the notion of going with a geriatric care physician? Of course we do. Well, then you'll have to wait till the next open enrollment because these companies have no commitment to geriatric care. What's a lawyer doing talking, giving geriatric lists and what? Because to me, it was never about law. It was never about money. It was about how we organize. We're the richest country in the world. We can do anything we want to, except when it comes to aging. That's healthcare. If that catches your attention, I promise you, this next one, this should simply blow your mind away. This is a Stanford University study that was just updated last year, where they looked at a bunch of studies that had been done, a bunch of people had been called around the country, and one question that was asked in the polls that were taken was, if you could choose the venue where you want to be when you're taking your last breath, where would you like to be when you're taking your last breath? What do you think the average American is saying? I want to be at home. By far majority of us say you want to die at home. Less than 30% of us would actually have that out there. This is last year's survey from Stanford. 70% of Americans will take their last breath in a hospital, in a hospice house, in a nursing home, assisted living, a place where we would much rather not be. The reason why this becomes so fascinating to me, because 1.2 billion people in India, 1.2 billion people in India will wake up with the same hopes. I hope I would live my life in my own home. The average Indian actually accomplishes that. The exception there is you didn't die at home. The exception in America is you actually died at home. So this is the interesting part of the equation. Here comes the mind-blowing part of the whole equation. Right in the middle of this reality, there actually exists an industry in America that will serve only a handful of us in this room, maybe 10% of us in this room. There'll be a small number of us that will go to and say, if we ever have to choose between home care and institutional care, and you pick home care, this industry will leave no stone unturned to helping you back home. And I promise you, every single one of us over the age of 18 probably knows the name of this industry. And if you haven't heard my lectures before, can any one of you tell me what that name of the industry is? Isn't this a dang shame? And the shame is when I go to hospitals and I'm talking to physicians and nurses, they can't come up with a name either. Hospice. Think about it. If you have less than 6 months to live, oh Rajiv, how would you like to spend those last 6 months in your own home? Of course I would. Who would not? All right, let's see what it will take to make it happen. Pull together a multidisciplinary medical team headed by a social worker, occupational therapist, physical therapist. Go to Rajiv's house, take a look. What will it take for him to go back home? He needs a hospital bed, respirator, grab bars, safety equipment, make it all happen. Send a nurse. Send a bath equipment and hygiene needs. Send a spiritual advisor to counsel this family through this difficult time. And make sure every single family member has access to a 800 number, which they can call at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, anytime. They should never feel outsourced. All of a sudden, your family thinks, oh, I think we can do this. So 6 months or less. What happens to people who have 6 months and 1 day to live? That is my mom. 4 years ago, she had a heart attack. Took her down to the hospital, put a stent in the heart and said, oh, Mr. Nagaich, we need to bring her back. She's got a bad valve. We need to do a mitral valve replacement surgery. Now, how many of you know what that is, a mitral valve replacement surgery? A few of you, right? For those of you who don't know, the most bizarre thing that can happen to people. She's got a bad valve. They cut her open, they saw her sternum, they pulled the chest apart, they put the hand in the heart, they stop the heart. They cut the heart open. They take the bad valve, throw it out, stick a new one in, reverse engineer it. After 7 or 10 days, here comes the nurse. Oh, Mr. Nagaich, your mom is making fabulous progress. She's done so well. Now, which rehab center are you going to take her to? Oh, she isn't going to a rehab center. We're planning on taking her home. Oh, you can do that. Why don't I do that? You don't know what you're getting into. Oh, honey, you have no clue what I do for a living. That's what you do. For years, I've been blaring my lungs out. There is no magic to a place of care. It's a bloody place of care. Tell me, which rehab center do you think I should take my mom to at the anesthesia? Not only is she busy plucking things out of the air, talking to people who've been long dead, she is speaking to every single person in Hindi. Which rehab center do you have in this town where my dad, my wife, my children, we are not going to be stuck with her? If she's going to do that, she's going back home. She leaves, the supervisor comes in, the supervisor leaves, the doctor comes in. This doctor listens to me on the radio. And I'm saying to John, I said, Dr. Luber, if I let my mom go to a rehab center, I'll be the biggest damn hypocrite in this town. You got to help me figure out a way. He helped us. We took her back home. I don't want to make it sound like it's a walk in the park. It never is. But raising children was also not a walk in the park. Our parents did it for us. We took him back home. Now here's the thing that I want you to do for a second. Change places with my mom. You, not my mom, were in the hospital. You're in that bed. There's the nurse sitting on one side, your child, your power of attorney, your spouse, somebody standing on the other side of the bed, and the nurse is saying, oh, you know, your loved one, they've come out great through the surgery process. Now, which rehab center do you want to take them to? What answer do you think the average person's power of attorney will give today? What answer do you think is going to come out of their mouth?
Take him home.
Take him home, you wish.
What do you recommend?
What do you recommend is more likely the answer. What do you think? Which is the best one, which is the closest one, which is the cheapest? I hope not that. Some criteria that we're going to have, which is something, and then we will come. Why is the answer not, I will take you back home? Because you have planned. The average American has planned for that not to be the answer. What do you mean I planned for that not to be the answer? Think about the planning around illnesses. It's a legal document called power of attorney. What does that document do? Well, you survey a lot of people in your life and say, of all the people that I know in my life, these are the 3 or 4 people I trust. When I can't manage my affairs, they will be able to figure things out. And so you put their names in the document. Usually if you have a spouse, it's the spouse and then some children. If you don't have a spouse, no children, go to Red Robin tonight, buy somebody lots of beer and take their name in it. You need someone's name in there. Now, the document basically says, I love you, I trust you. When the time comes, my chips are down, you figure it out. Right? Figure what out? Where does it say, what do you want this child to figure out? Why would you not have something stupidly simple as, The moment I fall ill and I cannot advocate for myself, I know I'm tacitly admitting that you're going to be in charge, and at that time, the first thing that I'm going to require, I'm not even going to ask you, I'm going to tell you, you are required to do, is to pick up the phone, call that hospice type of person. I may not be qualified for hospice, so you're going to have to pay them privately. And the first question out of your mouth is going to be, I got a mom or a dad, husband, wife stuck in the hospital. I want to be able to take them back home, not a clue how I'm going to do it, but you have all the answers. I'm going to pay you, I want you to go work with the discharge nurse, please bring my mom and dad back home. Why would we not want to do something as simple as that? Because LegalZoom thinks, oh, you don't need anything other than just a super document called power of attorney. What's the difference between power of attorney A and B? Well, just names and addresses that are different, maybe 2 or 3 boxes that you sign differently, but every single person walking away from an estate planning attorney's office or LegalZoom.com, they have the same stupid document. I promise you, the average American should have 80% or better probability that if you fall ill, if you have done all your job right, you should have every mechanism to be able to come back home. I promise you, it doesn't take millions of dollars. It takes a little bit amount of money, but if you can organize your life and make that your goal, the average person should be able to live much longer in their own home than the average person does today. That's how it's. Then you take a look at finances. In our society, financial planning is all about investing money and buying property. And when property talk, far more important is going to be how do you use your money? And I give you one example, how you force your agents, your children, to use your money differently. You have to make sure that they're going to do something different. Then you come down to the single biggest financial threat the average American faces. The single biggest financial threat the average American who has less than $2 million in America, by way of an estate, is going to face is if you fall in retirement and Medicare says, oh, we don't cover that illness. Why would Medicare not cover anything? Because we only cover acute care needs, we don't cover long-term care needs. What is acute care? You go to a doctor says, I can do something for you, I can give you a pill, I can operate on you, I can give you some therapy, I can put a cast in your broken bone, we can put some gizmos in your body, artificial knees and hips and brains and God knows what else they can come up with. That's all. If somebody in the traditional medical community can make money off your misery, that's God. What's not covered? You have an illness, there is no cure. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. You don't need medication for that. You need someone to cook for you, clean for you, get you out of bed, get you into the shop. Everything that home care, home health, assisted living, nursing homes do, none of that stuff is covered in any meaningful way by your Medicare system. But Medicare will cover that, yeah. But so let's see, who all will cover? Medicare won't, long-term care insurance policies will. Should you buy the policy? You'd be crazy at least not to look at the policy. But don't go to an insurance agent to go and see, should I buy the policy? Because the real question in long-term care is not whether you can afford the premium today. The real question in long-term care policies is going to be 20 years from today when you're in retirement on a fixed income and the premiums are double or triple. At that time, will you be able to afford the premiums? If the answer is yes, you should buy the policy. Much better way to take care of it. In my practice, 8 to 10% of my clients, I can say, yes, you should be buying the policy, and then we will help them decide traditional policy, asset-based policy, hybrid policy. There's many different types of policy. But vast majority of Americans, I can even my clients, I can say you should buy this. So if you can't buy the policy, then you can pay privately. Of course you can. Between a few $1,000s a month to upward of $15,000, $20,000 a month. For every single month that you're alive. That is a pretty darn expensive proposition, isn't it? Oh, but then you find out that VA and Medicare, I should have changed that to Medicare, VA and Medicare will cover that. Yeah, but how do they cover it? Here's how they cover it. Spend your money down to nothing, then come with this. Isn't that how the programs work? Medicare says when you're down to $2,000, come look us up, we'll go ahead and cover the bills. So when do we pay attention to this issue? Oh, by the way, if you want to spend your money down to $2,000, you take a notion that, oh, I've got 3 kids. Why don't I give my assets to my children? Medicare has a different answer to that. Have you given away any assets in the last 5 years? When do you want that 5 years to start? Today when you don't need Medicare, or tomorrow when you're in the hospital very aching to come back home? understanding that Medicare, by the way, you've got even a worse situation than Washington does have. The worst situation, you've got limits to how many people can be on home care. There's a waiting list up there. You put your name on the list, hopefully before your money runs out, your name will be picked up. That's the reason why you need to look at protecting money ahead of time, because I promise you in the end, the real question is not, how do I protect my money to leave an inheritance to my children? The real question should be, how do I protect the money so if I'm ill, I don't become a burden to my children, they don't become unpaid caregivers to us, and I don't get shuffled into a nursing home against my wishes, because Medicare will never give you 24/7 care at home, even though they'll give you 24/7 care in the nursing home. But if he has some assets he can add to the Medicare benefits, you could say to your children, I want you to be able to organize my life when I'm in the hospital to bring me back home without you becoming my caregiver, unless you want to be paid like a caregiver. That's finances. Legal. Two notions that I bring. I mean, when I started looking at Bill Wiggins' life, the notions I developed were, one is called a safe harbor trust, and another is how do you develop a power of attorney. What's a safe harbor trust? Both Washington, California, and community property states. All you married people in this room, community property means 50-50, right? 50% that is in our estate belongs to my wife, 50% that I own also belongs to her because she thinks I wasn't born here, so she has all the rights. That is my best joke for the afternoon. It's 50-50. Now ask yourself this question. Do community property laws in the state of in California require that when you die, you must leave your 50% to your spouse? Answer is?
You have to.
No.
What?
You can leave your 50% to whoever.
Oh, leave it. I thought you meant like community property. It's always half here. Okay.
Yeah, it's half and half. But you could leave your Kerri, you could leave your 50% to Rajiv. He'd be real grateful for that. But because you can leave your money to somebody, if I was looking at the average person's will or trust that you have in place today, and I went to that paragraph that says, when I die, I am leaving my money to, whose name do you think this married person is going to put in that line? Why? That's an awkward question. Because my lawyer told me so, because I love my wife, because I want to take care of her after I'm dead, because she suffered enough already. Because she'd kill me if I didn't do that. That's the way. See how good that plan is going to work out for the small to medium-sized estates. 350 out of $700,000 estate. Rajiv dies, kicks the can, leaves his 350 to his wife. Didn't have to, but I love her, I trust her, I want to do that. Leaves it to her. She has a 350. Gets my 350. How much money does she have now? 700. She is now single. If she ever needed to access Medicare as a single person, how much money can she have to her name? $2,000. How much money would she have to spend on to get there? Why would you want to go ahead and say, because I want to make sure that after I'm dead, you're never going to be broke. You will never be a financial burden to my children. You're never going to have to worry about will I be able to access care in my own home, even if I have to need Medicare, because no Medicare, no government, no creditor can have you spend this money down to $2,000 because this was never your money. You still have to spend your money down to $2,000. But this is how you're going to have the assurance that life will continue, and you're looking at your children, because who's going to be there for mom and dad after you're gone? It's your children. You're looking at your children and saying, let me give you a portion of assets. I just don't want to give you responsibility. And give you some resources to go along with the responsibility. Why would we want to do something as stupidly simple as that?
Is that the same thing as an AD trust?
No. AD trust protects your money from estate taxes. That means your estate exceeds $11.4 million today. California does not have a state-to-state tax. Ma'am.
Is there a mechanism to have a court take jurisdiction of this trust?
Yes, I mean, you can do it any which way, you can, but you know, in my world, you would have to have rocks in your mind to have a court take jurisdiction of anything in your life.
No, to circumvent it.
Yes, you can. I mean, we can come up with any good attorney will come up with all sorts of crazy things. As sadly, Ms. Rooney, you and Ms. Kasem, you guys are finding out. Law has two sides to the story, and I can make an argument either way on either side of the story. Do you ever want to trust that system?
Yeah.
And the answer is hell no. Not just a no. So you need to be doing something different. So that's how one can do different planning in the state plan. Why else might I want to do something like this? So I want to introduce you to my wife. There's one operation of my wife now. With some schmuck who is not me. And this is after I am dead. And this is such a cultural issue. In India, I grew up in a joint family system. 16 of us in the same house. My grandmother died, my grandfather never lacked human companionship. What happens in America? You're not the type of parents who are going to call up and say, hey, Schmucko, you call up your kids and say, hey, Schmucko, I'm lonely. Clean up a bedroom, I'm moving in. That's not us. The kids are not going to know when to get involved with their life, and we create the void, the neighbor, the church person, the contractor, some banker, some manager person, they take control in that void. And I'm saying, know this about the Safe Harbor Trust. Maybe the trust bought your ticket to put you here on this beach with this schmuck. But never a penny of my money will ever go to help anyone other than you and our 3 children, regardless whether you get a prenup agreement, whether you do anything or not. Why would you want to do something as simple as that?
Well, maybe you want her to be happy after you die.
Yeah, well, she is happy, but not with my money. Single people, what do you do? Spend your money down to $2,000. You know the rules, they're not getting any better anytime soon. Why don't we take some of the money and put it into a trust today? Problem single people have that married people don't have. Have you given away any assets in the last?
5 years.
When do you want that to start? Today, when you don't need Medicare, or tomorrow when you need Medicare? Ma'am.
Actually, as a former medical worker, the look back period is 2.5 years. It's 30 months here in the state of California, which is different than any other state.
Lovely.
Because we haven't adopted the federal mandates of the Deficit Reduction Act.
That's right.
In California. And married couples can have unlimited assets and income.
Right. So that's why I didn't focus on the married people. So the comment that was made was in California, you don't have to wait 5 years, you have to wait 30 months. So half the amount of time. And in California, if you're married, you can protect the money, and that's all over the country. If you're married, you move the money to a spouse, do a Mickey Mouse amount of planning, and voila, you can protect the asset. The real problem is when you're single.
The spousal impoverishment laws protects the spouse in the community.
Right. And that's all over the country is somewhat similar, and you can protect the money. The real problem is when you're single because you don't have a spouse. So unless you want to get into the business of renting a spouse for a few days, bad idea no matter which way you go. The only plan you have to do this 30 months ahead, 2.5 years ahead of time here in Washington, in California. In Washington, you'd have to do it 5 years ahead of time. And all these rules are susceptible to go from 2.5 years in California to sooner or later there'll be 5 years. I think you guys are just looking at your tax debate that you're having in the budget now. Everything is going up yet again. Really, is there even room for you guys to go up in taxes? But yeah, there you go. Now,
And here in California, like no other state, which we're very liberal, it allows you to preserve your assets so you don't have to spend things down. You can give them to your children and get on Medi-Cal, whether you're single or married.
right, so the comment was in California, we're quite liberal with our benefits, so you don't have to spend them down, you can gift it, you can do things, and so please go see the Medi-Cal people outside of there, so they can at least tell you. There's so much misconception about how do you protect your assets. There's
But
so much misconception.
That's
Yeah.
only in California, we have a room full of people that are
Yeah.
all over the country.
Right.
So, I mean.
It's different here in California
Yeah.
than any other state.
Right. So if you're from other states, don't even listen to her. She's just lying. Now,
Can you play back one slide? I have to take a picture of that one slide. Thank you.
that'll be 25 cents. But the other thing in legal planning is we do powers of attorney. And the simple reason why we do a document called power of attorney is because we're thinking, if we do this power of attorney, somehow I will not be a burden to my children, and somehow there will be predictability of outcome. that, these people will know what to do. Go ask Ms. Rooney and go ask Ms. Kasem as to how predictable the power of attorney turned out to be. Right? Here's what my analysis is. The average person's power of attorney is a singular guarantee. The moment you fall ill, you will be a burden on whoever name you put in there. You've done nothing in the power of attorney to minimize the burdens. You've done nothing in the power of attorney to assure yourself a predictable outcome. Why? Because every power of attorney in the legal world is a form. Are you bloody kidding me? Forms mean nothing unless until you're going to sit there and say, you set out your expectations. Here's the way that I explain it to my clients. Your power of attorney should read like a manual of instructions. I fall ill. You are required to call a geriatric care manager. You don't even have a choice. I'm telling you. You're going to call somebody from the medical community, a hospice type of person, and the first question you're going to ask is that, we looked at a housing issue. We want to be able to live at home. We were living in a 4-story home, but we sold that. Now we are in a rambler. And we looked at our finances between Medicare, between our assets. Yes, we should be able to go ahead and bring the care at home. And now, having done all that analysis, I'm confident. I want you to advocate to bring me at home. Put that in writing. Your power of attorney should read like a manual of instruction. Right now, it is anything but. Oh, you'll figure it out. Figure what out? 70% of Americans are not going to die at home. That's what we're trying to figure out. Finances. I don't want to be a burden on somebody, really. Be honest about this stuff. You can't file your taxes today. You're ill. You can't file your taxes. It was so easy. Oh, TurboTax, it just does it easily. Your kids now have to go file the taxes. How easy will it be for them? Why would your power of attorney not do something as stupidly simple as saying that, I don't like to pay money, but taxes now are being done for about $300 to $400 by an average accountant. I'll go establish myself with an accountant. If I like this accountant, I'll put that person's name in the power of attorney and say, when I fall ill, you go to this accountant, this financial planner, this property manager, this bill payer, and you're going to pull your life together so you don't truly become a burden. And if your children want to do the bill paying and the tax filing, they should be paid exactly like we'd be paying somebody else. Why would we not want to do something like that?
If you have a power of attorney and you can change it, right? You can
Sure.
change the person at any time. If it gets changed, isn't the former person that's on there has to be informed that it's been changed?
So that's a more complex question. Kathy's question was, I have a power of attorney, I'm going to change the power of attorney. But when I change it, don't I have to inform the previous agent in the power of attorney and changing, you're no longer the agent? The answer is yes. Because an agent can act, as long as they're acting in good faith, on knowledge that I still have the power. They can act and bind you. But if you don't want them to do it from this point on, then you have to send them a letter and say you no longer have it.
Okay, I'm talking Washington State, that's where you're
Yeah.
from, right?
Yeah.
My brother had power of attorney for 20 years. When he supposedly, my father entered this domestic partnership, supposedly, we were told by the probate attorney that, because he tried to go get his medical records to show that he had dementia. And we were told that he no longer held the power of attorney by the doctor, because he had a more recent one.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talked to my dad's probate attorney that did this, he said, why wasn't I informed? I've had it for 20 years. And she says, we'll consider this your informed now.
But actually, that is.
And then later on, we found out they never changed it. He was still on it after he died. We found out.
Did you all hear that? What Kathy was talking about? I mean, I wish I want to go ahead and really address that. And there are 2 or 3 other questions that went on that I want to so badly address. I don't have the time to do that. I'll talk to you right after this one, but you're right about that. What law says and how it's implemented are 2 totally different things. Right? And so you don't want to really depend on the law to do things. These are things in my book. You and I need to be doing it, and I'll make my case now. This is tough. This is a 2014 study that comes out. 70% of the states in America will fail to leave all their state assets to the children. Only 30% will get all the assets go. 70% of states will lose some of the money, leak it out, won't ever make it to children. Why? Mostly because of family funds. Oh, that's not our children. only 70%, but we're not in the 70%. This is pretty crazy. And here's what I say, and who could these people be? Sorry if I'm gonna call you guys out here. But this is what I've been talking about forever. For 17 years I've been talking about this. Brooke Astor, Mickey Rooney, Casey Kasem, Stan Lee, Tim Conway now. If they can somehow figure out, and we are going to now depend on what I call is what we are doing in this conference is talking about downstream planning. What is downstream planning? What we could have done a little bit differently upstream before we got there, we're now having to do way downstream. So here's what the message I give everyone. Here's the problem with planning in America. We do one hell of a lot of planning in America to get ready for retirement. It's not that we don't plan. I promise you, we do one hell of a lot of planning. But what does the planning look like? We are totally dependent on other professionals to tell us what we ought to do. For medical, we go to doctors, nurses, PAs, whatever. For housing, we go to real estate agents, mortgage brokers, people, reverse mortgage people in that way. Finances, accountants and financial planners, insurance agents, legal, lawyers. How do we do the plan? Oh, Mr. Lawyer, I'm about to retire. What do you think I should do? The lawyers figured out. Financial, every industry has figured out you're going to need to come to us for help. So they have to have answers for you. And they have come up with some answers. Here's the fatal flaw in that plan. Which industry do you honestly believe is going to come up with an answer that does not serve the financial needs of the industry before it serves your needs? That's the bloody problem. We're sending other people who have no business in your life, and they're just doing it from their vantage point. You need documents, you need bills, you need to go ahead and buy this nice, lovely dream home, you need to go ahead and invest, buy. And yet, in the end, 70% of Americans will not take the last step in their own home. You need to change that. How do you go about changing that? Here's how. What I do is, it's not about estate planning or having legal documents or having money. It's about having 3 steps that have to be absolutely taken. The first step in any proper planning has to be, you have to have a retirement blueprint. Why? Because you can't go to a lawyer and say, what do you think I should do? You need to be going to the lawyer and saying, you know what? Whatever else you're going to go ahead and tell me to do, these are my objectives. I need for you to come up with a plan to deliver these goals. You go to a doctor and say, it is important to me that you be there after I have a stroke to save my life. But I want you to go ahead and help me prevent the stroke from happening to begin with. You go to the housing people. I want predictability of outcome. I'm in the hospital. I can actually come back home. That means you just can't look at the house itself. You have to know what other resources will you need to go and pull together to be able to come back home. And we have, in all these cases that I talk about, and I say this, Nancy Reagan and Sandra Day O'Connor. Those are your 2 poster child opposite study cases that I spent a lot of time studying and writing about. Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's. He was able to take his last breath in his own home. Why? Because Nancy Reagan knew her job was never to be a caregiver. She intuitively knew her job was to see to it that the care is given, and her job was to organize everything. Sandra Day O'Connor resigns her bench from the Supreme Court, goes to Arizona. Within 1 year, her husband ends up in an institutional care setting. Biggest mistake what the planning is blueprint. We don't do in America. We just do the second part. We just jump into the implementation part. Find a doctor, buy a house, and save money, and invest money, and buy products, and put together legal documents. We're damn good at doing this. Then we take a look at this third one. It's absolutely missing. And I want to come and spend a little bit of time on this little issue with you. What is the blueprint? Blueprint is you. I'll send you, Kerri, I'll send you this whole PowerPoint presentation here. You can put it up on your website. You can figure this out. The only reason why you need to do a blueprint is because you need to be in charge. This is your life. It's not your financial planner's life. It's not your lawyer's life. You need to be in charge. And it takes months to develop this. It's taken me 17 years of acting as a lawyer and accountant. My wife's a psychologist, so there's a lot of study that I do on counseling issues. But if you are in the hands of a good counselor, you can come up with a plan that is your plan, not somebody else's plan. But it takes months to develop. The average case takes me about 9 to 15 months to go through. It's not just a one deal thing. To me, this is not, people are people. Bill was a human being. He may not have had a lot of money, but he was a loving dad. He did everything he needed to do for his children. His children wanted to do everything back in return, except the whole system is stacked against you. Because it was not your life, it was somebody else's thinking of what your life is. Implement. You go through this stuff. And somewhere along the lines when you go through, you start looking at what are my options to approach healthcare prevention point of view? How should I approach my housing so I have predictability, able to come back home if that's what I want? And many of you will say, no, I want to go live in a retirement community. But which is the right retirement community? There are more imposters in that space than there are real retirement communities. A good retirement community is one where you will get written assurance that the day that you move into the community, if your money runs out, they won't ask you to move again. If your health fails you, they won't ask you to move again. That's the only type of retirement community you have to move. But you don't get that. And the majority of the people, buildings that are coming up in every neighborhood nowadays, they don't have any such assurance. And you have to have finances, you have to have the gut to know, not only do I have enough money, or I've looked at Medicare and long-term care insurance and all of that stuff, but if I have enough money, what assurance that this money will be used a certain way? That's financing. Same thing with legal. Once you go through this plan, here's the litmus test. Do you have a good enough retirement plan? You're in the hospital, the nurse is asking your agent, which rehab center, what answer do you want to have coming out of the mouth? And how confident can you be that they can give the answer without your needs becoming a burden to them or without you running out of money? You can't answer that question. You're nowhere close to having a retirement plan. You just have a assortment of isolated, fragmented plans. And the most important thing is the third one. The most important, and this is where it just drives me insane. Why do we not sit down with our wife today, maybe the eighth wife in your dad's case, maybe the second wife or third wife in your dad's case, and with all the children, and this is what I do as a practice. I've got multi-millionaires who sit down, and a few of them are humble enough to know that we do it. The majority of the people who have a lot of money are too arrogant in America to think that I need somebody else's help. I'll be able to figure this out on my own. That's what I found. But a few who are humble, they'll bring their family in, they'll bring their wife in, and we'll go through the whole process, and we will absolutely disestablish. It takes us about an hour and a half, 2 hours for the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, I will say to the children, you're going to make a promise to mom and dad, whoever they even saw, you're going to make a promise to the principal, you're going to make a promise to the people you're putting in charge, and here are the promises you have to make. Children, promise your mom and dad that they fall ill. You know exactly as to what their hopes are, you know exactly who they're putting in charge, you're not going to fight about anything. And you sign a document to that effect. And you parents are going to look at your children and promise them in return that the day they actually muster enough courage to walk into your life and say, we're concerned about you, you're not going to do something as crazy as say, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, honey, I'm okay, why don't you just leave? And if this is the only thing. You make those promises, this can happen. If we sit down with our children, look them in the eye, no matter how uncomfortable this discussion is, this is the only way that I know. This is upstream planning. We can probably solve 80% of the feuds and the fights that we have if we do upstream planning. And all the well-intentioned plans that we do, they end up in so much tragedy. This breaks my heart. It's needless. It has to be mediated. Never do your own family meeting. Get some counselor to come down. Have the written documents. Kerri had talked about in the last consultation came down to have it documented. Have it videotaped if you need to be. But everyone in the same, they can't escape that. That's like that. So, I'll take questions if you have. Wow, stunning into silence, I love that. Now.
So, do you find that people are engaging in the springing power of attorney? I don't know what it's called in the state of Washington, but you know where.
Springing, contingent, they're all the same, right? So the question was, are you finding that people are doing springing power of attorney? Springing power of attorney is that a document that says, I'm nominating Rajiv to be my agent, but he can only start acting after he goes to the doctor and gets a statement verifying that Rajiv is ill. Well, it depends as to who I'm talking to. If parents have supreme confidence in the children, I'd say don't put that roadblock. People don't go from sane to insane overnight. It's a long, slow, drawn-out process. And both of you have been victims of that issue. Did happen overnight, and that was good and that was bad. And in that, there's a lot of mayhem happens. People take advantage of that. If you don't have the immediate power to act, you can't help them. But if you don't trust your children enough, then probably contingent is enough. So it's all situational. We have to kind of talk it through. Good question, though. Thank you. Sir?
Can you address the issue of the long-term care insurance? Your thoughts on that again? Because I got a quote of $50,000. Pay $10,000 a year over 5 years, or pay $50,000, and it has a life insurance rider. The life insurance rider is only for $50,000, so it's not a great investment vehicle.
Right.
And it will probably last today's dollars for about 3 years worth of care.
Right.
But when were your professional?
So the question was, so what are your thoughts about long-term care insurance? And the gentleman described a hybrid policy where somebody is saying that give you $50,000, I'll put it into a life insurance policy. If you're lucky enough to go to sleep and not wake up, you give the $50,000 to whoever you tell us to. But if you do wake up, then we will give you a multiple of that $50,000 as a benefit. And that benefit in your calculation will take you up to 3 years of coverage. First of all, I wish I could give you a good answer. That doesn't sound like a good enough policy to me. Either you're going to have a policy that will take care of all your needs, or you're not going to have a policy and say, I will make alternative arrangements. Having a partial solution by way of a long-term care policy is the worst thing that we can end up doing. I bought a policy that will pay 50% of the bills. I still need to look to Medicare. I still have to go through all the drama. The policy will only pay for 3 or 4 years. Well, yeah, that's right. The average person in a nursing home lives 2.8 years, unless they are there for dementia, in which case they're going to stay in institutional care settings anywhere between 5 to 14 years. Which one, what are you really basing everything on? So your question really depends on when we do a financial dashboard. I take a look at everything that we have by way of assets and try and run the risk of that if we have to deal with long-term care, the worst outcome, 14 years of care is what you end up needing, about 6 or 7 years with almost no money infusement, but the rest of it, it'll take some money starting out at $3,000 to $5,000 a month, ramp it up all the way to $18,000 a month. Do you have enough money to last your lifetime? And how strongly do you want to leave an inheritance to your children? There's a lot more that goes into it. That's why I say do not go to an insurance agent to ask that question. Go to a financial analyst. Someone's got to take a look at a whole lot more variables before you can get there. Last question, ma'am. I know that I have to because I'm being given the hook and I'll die if I don't do that.
I just wanted to share with my experience in the years I've been planning and helping people qualify for Medicare. I've seen a number of clients who have purchased long-term care insurance who still needed to get on Medicare because the
Right.
benefit amount of the long-term care insurance didn't cover enough of their long-term care
Right.
costs.
Right.
So kind of the answer to your question too would be like what your level of care is. What your level of care is what really constitutes how high the cost of your care is. I have seen where long-term care policies have been a good solution where their level of care wasn't as high, so it didn't cost as much, and it did help them remain in the home. But
Right.
you just don't know when you become ill, like how much care am I going to need and how much will the cost of that be to really decide if that long-term care insurance
So
policy.
let me paraphrase that simply. I think your comment is that we don't know how it's going to play out in the future. Some cases it's good, some cases it's not good. And from a planning perspective, you always want to plan for the worst outcomes. You don't plan for, okay, things will go okay. And unfortunately, we don't plan for the worst outcomes. We plan as if the worst outcomes will never happen. This is the best way life is going to turn out. That's how we plan. That's not a good way to go ahead and plan. So, but you're on the right path. Do investigate that a little bit more.
Thank you very much.
Guys, thanks so much for letting me come down from Washington. I really appreciate it.